This is the story of two drivers who raced the same car on the same track under the same rules and walked away with completely opposite verdicts about what Formula One has become. Max Verstappen retired from the Chinese Grand Prix, stood in front of the media, and warned that the 2026 regulations will ruin the sport and bite Formula One in the ass. Lewis Hamilton finished third on the podium at the same race and called it the best racing he has ever experienced in his entire Formula One career. Both of them have raced in Formula One for decades combined. Both of them know this sport at a level most of us never will. And somehow they watch the same race from the inside and reach completely different conclusions. This video is about why that happened and why both of them are actually right. The core change this season is a roughly 50-50 split between combustion engine power and electrical power, paired with active aerodynamics that replace the old DRS system. What this produced in practice are two things you can now see clearly on television: lift and coast, where drivers lift off the throttle early to recover energy even on qualifying laps, and super clipping, where the car visibly slows mid-straight with the driver's foot still flat on the floor because the system is harvesting rather than pushing. Those two details are all you need to understand why this season has divided the entire paddock down the middle, which we had discussed in detail in our previous video. What makes Verstappen's criticism particularly sharp is that it came directly after one of the worst weekends of his recent career. At Shanghai, he finished 9th in the sprint, outside the points, and then retired from the Grand Prix while running 6th, a direct result of an ERS cooling problem that forced Red Bull to protect the power unit hardware. That retirement made it only his third pointless race weekend across the last 4 seasons, a number that tells you how unusual this kind of result actually is for him. Standing in front of reporters afterwards, his patience had run out entirely. He called the regulations fundamentally flawed, a joke and not racing, and warned Formula One directly that if the sport prioritizes commercial entertainment over the sporting product, it will come back and bite them in the ass. But what is less reported is that Verstappen is not just venting to the media. He confirmed at Shanghai that talks are already ongoing between himself and F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali about the direction the regulations should take, and he chose his words carefully when describing those conversations. He told reporters, "You have to be a bit careful with how you say things, but we are talking about it." He said he believes the FOM and FIA understand where the drivers are coming from, and then he named the exact political problem standing in the way of any change. Some drivers, he said, will defend the rules because they are winning races right now, and he acknowledged that is completely fair because when you have an advantage, you have no reason to give it up. His argument is that even if the commercial numbers look fine right now, building a formula around entertainment metrics rather than sporting quality will eventually cost the sport, the audience that actually understands what they are watching. Hamilton's Shanghai weekend ran on an entirely different track. Ferrari showed genuine pace. Hamilton challenged for the lead in the opening laps before Kimi Antonelli and George Russell proved too strong, and then he spent several laps in one of the most closely fought wheel-to-wheel battles of the weekend, trading position repeatedly with Charles Leclerc before securing third. When he stood in front of the media after taking his first podium with Ferrari, a first podium since Las Vegas in 2024, his words landed in almost direct opposition to everything Verstappen had just said. The cars are easier to follow now, close enough that he described the gap between him and Leclerc through some corners as a thin piece of paper, and the overall experience felt to him like go-karting, back and forth with real positioning battles rather than one car sitting in another car's dirty air, unable to do anything. He called it the best racing of his entire career in Formula One. Hamilton did acknowledge one problem: Ferrari's straight-line speed deficit against Mercedes, who made different deployment choices, but that acknowledgement reinforces rather than undermines his wider point. He sees the complexity as something Ferrari needs to solve, not a flaw in the formula itself. Here is where the real story lives. Verstappen's dominant championship years were built on a style that relies on maximum commitment through high-speed corners, using huge amounts of downforce and precise throttle control to carry speed through sections of track that reward the absolute limit of what a driver and car can do together. Under the 2026 rules, those same high-speed corners are being taken considerably slower than before because teams deliberately do not push through them in order to preserve energy for the straights. Fernando Alonso described this at Bahrain testing, when he pointed out that one particular high-speed corner was being taken at around 200 kilometers per hour instead of 260, purely for energy reasons, and joked that at those speeds the team's chef could probably drive through it. He also called the experience robot-style driving, where decisions are planned around energy maps rather than instinct. For Verstappen, that is not a minor adjustment. It removes the specific category of driving where he has historically been most difficult to beat. Hamilton, by contrast, has always been strongest at late braking, mechanical grip, managing race situations in traffic, and reading battles over multiple laps. A formula that reduces dirty air, brings cars closer together, and rewards racecraft through slow corners is, by coincidence or design, a formula that plays directly to what he has always done best. So, when Hamilton says this feels like the best racing of his career, he is not exaggerating. And when Verstappen says the rules have removed what racing actually is, he is not being dramatic. They are both accurately describing what the 2026 formula feels like from inside their particular way of driving it. The argument does not stop with those two. Lando Norris said the 50-50 power split simply does not work, complaining that he spends too much time looking at the steering wheel to manage battery levels instead of focusing on the track. Haas driver Oliver Bearman called the energy management side annoying and sad, pointing out that it changes even the feel of a qualifying lap. And Esteban Ocon confirmed that lifting early on straights for battery reasons is now completely normal, describing it as a very new thing to do. Domenicali's response has been firm throughout. He called the criticism premature and wrong, argued that the best driver will still be fastest under any formula, and said F1 remains open to adjustments as more data arrives, but that judging the regulations after less than 2 race weekends is not the right approach. And what sits underneath all of this is the political reality Verstappen named directly. Mercedes currently lead the championship, with Antonelli's win backed by Russell's second in China. Red Bull are fighting both reliability and energy deployment problems with their Ford power unit, and no team sitting at the top of the standings is going to willingly support changes that reduce their advantage. One race weekend, 2 completely opposite verdicts from 2 of the greatest drivers this sport has ever produced. Verstappen sees a formula that took away what made racing worth watching, and Hamilton sees a formula that finally lets drivers race the way it was always supposed to feel. With that said, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe for more F1 drama. See you in the next one.